Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Towns, Deputy Chief Content Officer for eRepublik. Welcome to our Q&A with Cisco's Neal Tilley. Neal is a strategic advisor and education business development manager for U.S. public sector at Cisco Systems. He's got more than 26 years of experience in the IT communications industry, and he's worked with education organizations across the world. Neal's also coordinator of the Cisco Higher Education Advisory Council, which currently includes CIOs from more than 44 top universities. So, Neal, welcome to the conversation. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. This is great. I'm really looking forward to talking about this topic. It's an extremely important topic for everybody to understand. So thank you for letting me come and talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And today the topic is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC, a new cybersecurity standard created by the U.S. Department of Defense that will have a significant impact on DoD contractors, including research universities. Neal, why don't we dive into that? Maybe you could first, tell us what CMMC is and give us an idea of its potential impact, especially on those research universities.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously it's, research universities are a pretty unique contractor to the federal government. Have had a long history. I think over 50% of the R&D budget of the DoD is actually spent with research universities. So it's an important sort of channel of research revenue inside of most of the R1s and some R2s. And then, of course, this maturity model certification has come about because of just an increase in the use of digital technologies in research, but also the impact of threats. And I think one of the things about compliances is that we've seen essentially I think there's like 300,000 federal contractors, and they're large, small, tiny little SMBs, and they all have to, they all kind of self-assess to the NIST standard in particular. And so what we're seeing is a slow but sort of change to a much more rigorous process of certification around people, processes, and the technologies. And of course, that change is all about controlled unclassified information and federal contract information. So anywhere there's a research contract that is pertinent to CUI and FCI data, there's now an expectation that you can't just go with a self-assessed environment. You have to be third-party assessed. So the impact on research is essentially it's kind of an approval of the self-assessment program, but now saying we're going to take the responsibility away from you for just ticking the boxes. Now that can have a number of different impacts, and one in particular is the holistic approach to the support of many security practices inside of a research university. Research universities are all about open academic freedom. They're all about having an ability to push the envelope when it comes to research and go and do things and break new ground. So the idea of having something restrictive, like a zero trust model, holistically across a whole university is a very difficult thing to manage and to move to. So the idea of how this new model comes in and having to get the compliance and the regulatory levels to the right level are something that many of the research universities haven't had to do before, and it's a real conundrum.
Yeah, so it really is going to change perhaps the way these institutions approach security, and they'll have to kind of prove that to an independent auditor to be certified.
Absolutely, and it's not a case of, it's actually very as you kind of look at the process now. It's not mandatory for till a few years, but when you consider that this sort of approach has to be well understood, and we're already seeing it in some of the the research projects that are coming out from the DoD in particular. Already asking for some of this sort of compliance put in place. there's an impact on the cost of bringing the networks, the security, the people, the processes up to speed ahead of time. Whereas with, say, a typical federal contractor who is, performing a task or operating something for the federal government or the DoD or a DIB in terms of like manufacturing, there's a sort of sense of predictability about that whole space. Whereas in the research universities, it is really about research. So it's a very interesting, and I think there's only a small percentage of the research universities who probably have everything they need today. Maybe because they were high up in cybersecurity, or maybe they were high up in compliance modeling, but really there's a vast number of research universities that are looking to see how they can really deal with this in the right way without essentially blocking the open academic freedom and research that they have, that they're known for, that is their legacy.
Neal, can you talk a little bit about how CMMC requirements build on existing standards and regulations like HIPAA, like the federal student loan data? How does it build on that, and then what's different about this?
Yeah, it's obviously there's a Russian doll effect to compliances. I think the most important thing is that traditionally we would look at university risk, right? So if you look at the data that is inside of a university, whether it's be research itself, the grants, all the labs, the testing, all the things that are there. This is really focused on those, but it's building on the standards that have been developed over time from, PCI, the financial student data, which typically is when we first saw NIST 800-171 come in and be a very, very consistent standard that many of the universities already are very, very competent in deploying. And then, of course, we've seen over time, the development of from a HIPAA perspective, which is very different to a FERPA or that sort of traditional sort of PCI, specific encryption or sort of different sort of factors that you have to adhere to. But what we're seeing with the personal information, PII and HIPAA is that segmentation, the user authenticity, multi-factor authentication, all these different services that have slowly but surely evolved are now all part of that sort of secure segmentation, automation, and governance of data. And so when we get to that top layer, which is research, grant, and testing, the fact is, the pockets of classified, uncontrolled information, is a level that's above that. Now, in fact, 70% of the contractors that are working with the DoD and will have to adhere to the CMMC regulations will only need to get to a level 1, level 2. This is the crucial difference between just looking at CMMC and saying, okay, we need to do something about it, to research universities are in the top 30%. So if you think about it, that's 30,000 organizations who are expected to get to the pretty much the highest level before you get into the super secret stuff. So when I talk about super secret, on a research perspective, the idea is that the DoD and the DIB are looking at this and saying, we can't rely, with all the hacking and all the different evidence from ransomware, from the hijacking of industrial control systems to some of the things that we've seen by nation states. We need to get that level inside the research universities, which means going to a zero trust model. Which means I think, that internally, what we talk about at Cisco Security, business unit is NIST plus 20, you're right? So it's building on top of NIST. And that's the important piece. It's really about getting to understand what you have in front of you, what sort of practices you can put in place, what can you leverage from what you've already got and built and is already doing a good job from a NIST perspective, from an encryption, a multi-factor authentication, all those things. And that's going to be third party. That's going to be multi-vendor, right? And then what do I need to bring onto that? Do I need to build an enclave? Do I need to build a cluster that will just reach that level and stick to it? Or can I make that mobile, or can I make that holistic across the whole environment? So it really is the next level up. And of course, moving to a zero trust type model like that, there's a lot of areas that our research universities, infosec groups, their SEAMs and their infrastructure people are going to need to understand.
So it's going to be quite a lift, it sounds like, for these institutions. You'll really have to assess what you have and do some pretty hard thinking around how to do this. And I mean, it's high stakes, right? It's pass or fail, whether you make the certification or not.
I think I've heard CIOs and CISOs and heads of research. I've gone and spoken to them, and they all come from a different angle, but they all kind of come to the same conclusion, which is, they have got they're in a fantastic position because of just the nature of the fact that some of these contracts have already been very much high stake, sort of programs, but the two crucial things that come out of these conversations is, this is a risk against future revenue or future research projects. It's also a risk because it's the prioritization of this has gone from what is this? Is this just a natural part of what we do, to the fact that it creates an environment that is going to change the way we look at university networks, right? So, the old days of university networks was maybe we separate out the academic, the research, and the admin networks, and have physical separation. And of course, that's not what this is about. This is not about going back to that era of running three separate networks, which is what some people are saying. Well, how do I do it holistically? But maybe I just have to separate my network. The idea is that, is this really one of the key factors to step into this sort of DevOps or Dev Security Ops, DevSecOps, to this automation world that we've been talking about? Is this the time to do that? So I think there's a combination here of people saying, this is something we need to do. The benefits outweigh that initial starting point, which is there's a learning curve that's steep, and there's probably a cost that's going to be kind of felt in that first stage. But then the outlay, the longer term sort of opportunity, or the longer term benefit to it, is actually very beneficial. I'll give you one more stat, which is quite important. So, we've talked about research universities being in the top 30% of the 300,000 contractors. And of course, Cisco knows this because we are one of the largest federal contractors in the United States, and we are going through CMMC ourselves. We're eating our own dog food. We're making sure that, we have engineers inside of Cisco IT and Cisco's info security team that are very, very much overseeing this, working closely with our services people, but also we've actually got some of our staff to go through and become assessors, not because we're going to become an assessment organization or to do third-party CMMC assessments, but so that we know what they're looking for, we know what they're driving. And I think that's something that's a luxury that many research universities won't have. And so it's important to understand that also the number of contractors and subcontractors that one must meet these sort of levels, especially at the level 3 and above, which is that critical research university space. There's going to be a logjam over the next 3 or 4 years. So there's going to be a logjam because, and this is a key factor, the DoD will pay for the accreditation, for the certification, right? So these are funded by DoD. So first of all, there's a gatekeeper there that says, "Oh, you want us to come and give you a CMMC certification? Well, you'll need to get in line," right? Now, what is the one thing that we're trying to do for research universities as technology vendors is speed the speed of research, right? Is to increase the speed of research. Get that research done, processed, and get the results out as fast as possible. That's what we're all trying to do. So when you get a situation like this that says, hey, there's going to be a logjam, you're going to have to wait your turn, and suddenly a university that was counting on 10, 30, $100 million of DoD based research suddenly saying, hey, if we miss this opportunity to get our green light and we get a red light, it could be a year, 2 years before we get another opportunity. So it's really crucial right now we're way ahead of the curve. We're in the first year of this, and it's just barely got started. But I absolutely say, in all the 300,000 federal contractors that are out there, the research universities should be the ones that are investing now. And fortunately, because of the way of the world, it's the time when they're least, the benefit is least visible to them, and the fact that they don't have that funding to do it. So, and especially coming out of the pandemic at the same time.
So even though the 2025 effective date of CMMC sounds like it might be a ways away, it's a lot closer than you think, sounds like. I mean, because of those factors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's even more, it's more critical as well, because this idea that, the CMMC model, this creates this real stronger security inside of research universities and inside the federal contractor base is being watched by many other organizations that would either use NIST or have a requirement to increase the integrity of their environment. And in fact, I think we are already seeing certain government contracts requesting a CMMC please explain how you're meeting the CMMC regulation, in basically to show them that not only are they got good NIST or good NIST support or they're doing the right things, but that ultimately we could see the General Services Administration, the Department of Energy, some of the other big agencies that fund these research universities asking for the same levels of CMMC cyber hygiene. The other thing which is really critical on that, that expanding and getting that third-party certification done as soon as possible, but also it's an ongoing thing. It's people and processes and technology over time. We've got to look at critical information around critical infrastructure. We've got to look around how they're exporting data. There's loads of information. And areas that probably aren't really on the radar right now, which means there's a lot of retrospective time going to have to take place to make sure when you pull that trigger and say, yes, now let's go get our CMMC, certification, you've got to be absolutely sure, which is, again, really crucial to understand, in the timeline, because as we see more and more research projects coming out of the DoD and DIB environment saying, you need CMMC level, whatever, you're also going to start seeing other organizations saying, hey, we'll take that on. And we've seen it with GDPR in Europe, so we've already got a precedent that we've seen where I think one of the teams told me that, if they're building a research lab, the person building the desk is also going to have to reach at least a level one CMMC, right? Which sounds crazy, but this is how nation states and how hackers work, right? They'll get into the one place you're not looking, which is a subcontract or a supply chain that is further down behind the actual research university. So again, I think part of the problem is that, this is not a critique or them criticizing the actual infrastructure security people, or the adheration of NIST or really delivering on that university risk model that I talked about and delivering it. We have so many phenomenal CISOs across the research and the non-research university field, and we've got so many great security intelligence systems and SIEMs and programs across the whole university research community. None of this is a criticism of them. It really is a sort of an indication of the world we live in today when it comes to how important digital technology is to everything that we do, and how many and how vulnerable it can be.
Yeah. Neal, given the criticality of this, what should universities be doing now to get up to speed? Like you said, there's time, but now's the time to get started. What do you do?
Yeah, a couple of real quick recommendations, which I expect most research universities and their InfoSec team are doing. But I would say, first of all, the security must work together with the infrastructure and the compliance people. I think, the technology, the intelligence, If you look at the security vendors that are inside those research universities today, they pretty much got everything covered. I mean, we provide a blueprint model where we can show some of the, very quickly show some of the hotspots or areas that have some, maybe lacking in some of the environments. But the security operations are now very close to the infrastructure. That's a synergy that we might not have had before, which is the networking people working closely with the security people in this format. I think, and that again is that moving forward into automation. And you think about it, we have a research university that wants to do research for the DoD using 5G, for example, right? So building some 5G clusters and tying it to some HPC, building up a research plan, getting the researchers in, getting the expertise in, maybe bringing some contractors in to provide certain services, maybe some analytical sort of side, and everybody in that environment, including all the devices, the network, the connectivity, the services, everything is now under a microscope. And so it has to start with the security and the infrastructure teams working together, looking at the technologies and the intelligence they got, and then really getting a good idea of where they need to, patch up or understand what their the gaps are, And that also is tied to practices and processes, right? So they have to look at how are they looking at their network, their endpoints, how are they looking at what services they're using in the cloud? I mean, again, cloud is a big issue. We've had this kind of evolution in research, which is it's started to move a lot of stuff to the cloud and still do the compute and some of the research on site in departmental workstations. But that move to the cloud is also a big part of understanding what your vulnerabilities are and whether that would get you a plus or a minus. And then, of course, understanding, making sure from an infrastructure point of view, your security infrastructure and your connectivity infrastructure, whether it's multi-vendor or not, get to understand how you can ensure that you can pull the right details from that. So having synergies between the SecOps, the IT operations, and the network operations is really crucial. I'd also say, understanding what areas NIST and CMMC is very similar in the sense that you can go down the list and see where your existing vendors sit and then your existing architecture sits. And so getting help to just make sure you can find those holes, those gaps in that environment. And I think the final thing I would suggest is, we have an opportunity here to kind of look at, segmentation and zero trust in a research university environment, meeting those CMMC regulations. But I think that, look at where the benefit is, further out. Look at where that can really impact the rest of the university. And it's important to build a visibility, a higher level view that says I can look at all of that I survey and know where potential threats are. And that's going to answer that question that we hear a lot from research universities, which is, do we go holistic, i.e. across all areas, so we cover every avenue, or do we go with secure enclaves just for that one research project? This, I think, if we do things right, we build on what we've got, and we get to this sort of zero trust and segmentation automation type world that we've all been trying to push up to, which we know is happening in the enterprise space. I think that will just increase a lot of the capabilities of the research university as a community. And that actually has a great output, which is more research, more success in that speed to research, which is the ultimate thing that we're trying to do.
Right. Neal, are there some critical questions these universities should be asking their vendors as they go through this process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and this is not something that I don't think any of our security leaders and our network leaders are already aware of when they're working with researchers and the community, especially from a DoD. I mean, DoD have been very clear about what these levels and what they're looking for. They're very clear about, the software-defined architecture, software-defined networking and segmentation is something that they should be maintained. That's not a negative. You're not going to get pulled down on a physical single network using software-defined architectures like role-based access control and stuff like that. But it's the holistic approach also has this integration model, right? So when you're looking at your infrastructure, when you're looking at your security architecture, you're looking at the tools and the different, the visibility that gives you in both those areas. And then you look at all of the different outputs and vendors that you've probably got, whether it's be, a sort of each of the applications like a ServiceNow or a Splunk, AWS, the Microsoft Azure, you've got all of the Cisco solutions. Obviously, I'm from Cisco, so I have to say that. Then you've got all of these other sort of smaller, artificial intelligence, machine learning. You've got all these things, and they're doing all these different things for you. And you've got to understand, what do they mean? What does it mean to the workforce of the research university? What are you doing to ensure you extend trust and respond to their world relating to the sensitive data that they're using? But then what are they actually working on, and where is that workload happening? Is it happening right here on-prem in the building, or is it happening in the cloud, or is it happening at another university? One of the things that the universities haven't really looked at yet is the fact that there's a cross-discipline, multi-shared research community. I mean, many of the research projects are shared across multiple research universities. So, are you going to find yourself in a situation where we're going to have to network across, say, the internet or a RAN to research universities doing a DoD project? And of course, yes, we are. They're going to have to ensure end-to-end, sort of security levels that at a level they've probably not done before. So looking at workload and looking at where that's going and what threats are involved, and then finally, of course, the workplace itself. Everything from receiving emails to the moving of sensitive data to maintaining a constant 24/7 watch on what's going on, so that you predict and you can quarantine anything that's going on. So really, we're saying, look at your workforce, look at your workload and where it's being done, and then look at the workplace and surrounding workplace that is being done. If you do that, and you look at the enablement of, from the SOC perspective, but also look at that infrastructure, where the orchestration is, whether that be in the cloud or whether that be local. That helps you with incident response as well. So it's an output. You'll actually improve your whole incident response. So yeah, I think those are the crucial areas. I think those three areas are probably the crucial. And I think I'll just counter that a little bit, which is, we know that zero trust is a difficult thing to put into a research university. Students, don't adhere to zero trust. They're not controlled by you. Their devices aren't controlled by you. In a corporate environment, zero trust means telling everybody what to do, and they'd have to do it. Zero trust is every time I log in, I have to prove it's me using MFA and stuff like that. So telling a student to do that is kind of, they get grumpy. Researchers are the same, right? They want open academic freedom. They want to be able to go and do and be free to go and do what they need to do in networks and locations and cloud services and websites and do it on devices that sometimes are out of control of the university itself. Maybe it's specific customized environments, or they built their own process modules, etc., and they don't necessarily have a specific vendor to use. They're probably using open source. So you've got all of that happening in this research university at the same time, being told you need to get to this highest possible level of zero trust and segmentation to get that level 3 accreditation that's going to allow you to continue to do defense FCI and CUI type research projects. So it's a real conundrum, and I think what's great is that vendors like Cisco going through the CMMC and ourselves means that we can lean on that and also make sure that we're giving the support that they all need.
Yeah. And I guess, for the universities themselves, yes, there are kind of the specific requirements around CMMC and the assessments, but this is going to put you, the kind of changes that we're talking about is going to put you on a better footing around protecting critical data and around, cybersecurity posture. There are going to be some real positive outcomes from this. despite, I mean, some of the effort's going to take to get there, there's going to be at the other side of this, it's going to be a good outcome.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say that this is there's always got to be a call to action, a sense of urgency about these things. But actually, I absolutely wholly believe, based on my experience of working with these universities and understanding some of the rest of the organization that's not necessarily under the same rigor as a CMMC environment, right? The fact that you can get an environment that can have pockets of CMMC level 3 and pockets of open academic freedom that can do anything they want, while students are milling around with their PlayStations and their need to have home commoditized devices, all on a single network. And then, of course, context is king, right? And it's key. Context is key to this whole environment. Getting that 360-degree visibility, making sure that the data is protected, privacy is protected, is crucial to every part of a university environment, especially as we're coming back from the pandemic, or as we move through the next few years of recovering from the pandemic. We're going to see this hybrid world mean increased numbers of devices, increased amount of use of digital technologies, digital applications, and of course, data is going to be everywhere. And the idea of being able to historically look in real time and predict the future in all levels of a university is going to be critical. So this move to shore up and put a much more, a third party approved level of rigor around users, devices, networks, applications, time, location, all the things that, we're going to need to do to get to that level of people, processes, and technology to get this CMMC level, actually isn't a bad thing for us to go through as an exercise. The benefits will outweigh the benefit of mitigating the risk of losing research dollars. It will actually increase the opportunity for research. It will increase the closeness, the proximity, and the intimacy with students. Any university looking for 360-degree student experience, needs to have a way of being very sort of tight and control and have that full visibility, but without breaking those privacy or that privacy level, right? So I think this is an exciting time in universities in terms of digital transformation. I think the heartburn that many will face right now about looking at being at the base of the mountain and looking up and saying this is a big mountain to climb. I think it will be very much worth it for the view, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, Neal, really appreciate your insights on this. Thanks for spending some time with us.
You're welcome. This has been a privilege, and obviously we're hell-bent on helping all of our higher education customers, not just our research R1s and DoD related research universities, but all universities, especially the ones that are trying to increase their research and are maybe even looking to go and attract some of these DoD projects, etc., by building some capabilities. So yeah, absolutely, this has been a fantastic. Thank you, Steve.